welcome back to my channel. So after the Met Gala, like everybody was talking about Billie Eilish's dress, and yes, it was stunning and gorgeous and all that, but the look that we weren't talking about enough, in my opinion, was Grimes's look. Like honestly, I have no clue how it was supposed to like fit into the theme, but for some reason it was definitely my favorite look. It just like stood out the most, and like she looked so cool with the sword. And honestly, like something about it, it's still stuck in my brain. So when I was going to start off making these Met Gala looks, that was actually the one I was planning to make, but so many people wanted me to make Billie's dress, so I did that one first. But now we are finally onto Grimes's look. And again, honestly, I don't really know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't know how to make this look because it's honestly insane. But I have a lot of fabric here and a lot of willpower, so let's see if I can make something happen. And I will go through all the fabrics really quickly. So this is 5 yards of a white chiffon fabric that I got from Fabric Wholesale Direct. None of this is sponsored. And the main fabric on Grimes's look was an ombre from white to black. So I also bought this black synthetic dye that I'm going to try to make an ombre out of this fabric with, and honestly I am terrified. I just feel like I'm gonna mess it up, but we're gonna try it. Next here I have 2 yards of this tan power mesh fabric, again from Fabric Wholesale Direct, and this is what the underlayer of the look is made out of because we're going to basically be top stitching this on top of it. This is 1 yard of a knit stretch jersey in the color tan, and I don't really think that this is a tan color, but I guess I'm going to use it anyway. Basically out of this I'm just going to make like a little pair of shorts and a small top to go underneath the main dress so that it's not see-through. And then to make all of the cool like scaly things on the dress, I got this pleather fabric from Joann's, and I think I got half a yard of this. And my plan is, because this fabric doesn't unravel or fray at all, we can cut out all of the shapes that go on top of the bodice and then paint around them with some silver. And I'm hoping that'll work nicely. And then the last fabric here is just a 1/4 yard of this silver metallic fabric from Joann's, and I'm going to use this to make her mask. And then from Joann's I also got a bunch of like beads and wires and chains and stuff to make all of her jewelry, which I am really excited about. So like I have a basic idea in my brain, but I'm not totally sure how I'm going to make this work. So let's give it a try. So really the only pieces we have to cut out for this project pattern-wise are all of the tan pieces. So this is going to be the mesh dress and then also the little like top and shorts. And then everything else is pretty much just decoration on top of it. And so here's the first piece, and this is the front of the shorts, so these are the measurements I used. And then the next piece is the back of the shorts, and these are actually pretty similar, just the measurements are a little bit different and slightly different angles. And then this piece is the waistband piece. We're going to cut 2 of these with a little triangle on the sides because we're actually going to fold this piece in half, so we want it to be a little bit smaller at our waists. And then these are the top pieces, and I'm just showing you guys the front and back together here because they're exactly the same, except the neckline is going to dip slightly lower on the front. And then this is the big dress piece, and I had to move poor Chloe out of the way because it just wasn't fitting. And again, this is the same deal as the front pieces. This is both the front and the back, but the front has a slightly lower neckline. And for this dress, I'm actually doing raglan sleeves, which I don't think I've done on my channel before. And they're kind of that baseball shape that like go down the sides of the front. So the shape of this is a little bit different than you guys are used to. And then the last piece is just a little collar to go around the neckline. Alright, well, some exciting news is that I finally moved into my own place this week, so this is my new setup now. And I think it's time to start sewing this project up. I think I'm going to sew together the mesh parts first, because essentially all that we're going to be doing right now is sewing these together down the side seams. And I cut these pieces really big because preferably I want to be able to slip this mesh part over my head for the dress, but I still want it to be nice and form-fitting, so I'm going to have to adjust it quite a bit when it's on me. And because this mesh is so stretchy, I'm going to be using my little baby zigzag stitch or the lightning bolt stitch, whatever it's called. This stitch works well, but oh my gosh, it is so slow. And now I'm going to be taking our sleeve pieces and I'm going to just fold them in half and sew down this seam here. Oh yeah, I've got a lot to take in. Now that this has been fixed up, we're going to attach our sleeves. And these sleeves are called raglan sleeves. So the way we're going to sew them is going to be a little bit different, but I'm going to take the shorter side and put it towards the shorter side of the front and match up their side seams first. And then I'm just going to continue pinning each side together. And then I'm going to stitch this. And the last mesh pieces to put together are the collar, so I'm just going to fold it in half and sew down the little seam, fold this piece in half, and then attach it around the neckline of the dress. And now that the mesh layer is done, I'm going to start sewing up the under layers. And so I'm going to work on the top first, and I'm going to sew these down the side seams and across the shoulder seams. And quite honestly, because I think I'm only ever going to use this shirt for this project, I don't even think I'm going to hem the edges because you're really not going to see it. And now I'm going to start assembling the shorts by taking one back piece and one front piece and putting these pretty side to pretty side and sewing them together down either side here. And now that we have both of these pieces, I'm going to take one and turn it right side out, and then I'm going to line these two pieces around the curved seam and stitch it in place. And then when you turn this piece right side out, that's when it starts to finally look like shorts. And then I'm going to take the two waistband pieces and put these pretty side and stitch them down either side. Alrighty, and now that this fits nice and snugly on my waist, I folded it in half and now I'm going to sew it across the top edge of the shorts. Alright, now that the kind of under pieces are done, we need to start doing the decorative stuff on top. So the first thing I think I'm going to tackle is all of the like black details of the dress. So I looked at her dress and the scales are kind of formed into a pattern shape. So I think my plan is I'm going to make those entire pieces and then I'm slowly going to like cut out those wavy shapes and kind of separate them to get that same effect. So I filled up a pot of water to boil on the stove and it says to keep it below boiling, but I'm going to try to get mine above boiling because I'm going to be taking it outside, so I can't continue the constant temperature. So I want to start it off as hot as I can get it. And then while that's boiling, I'm also going to dunk my fabric in water because it should be fully wet before we do this. And getting it nice and wet will also help us get the nice ombre, I think. And then I'm going to be taking this all outside because I think the ombre might make a mess inside. Okay, I brought it outside today because this one is actually scary because it has to be an ombre, so let's go for it. I'm gonna add some dish soap because that's what it says to do. Okay, so I also wetted my fabric. It's really wet. And I'm just going to do either end so we have all of the white in the middle. It honestly looks kind of purple. Oh, it's actually going all the way up. Ah! And I wanted one end to be longer than the other, so we have some different lengths of ombre to work with. But let's see what I can do here. Alright, well that's looking pretty good so far actually. This feels like that science experiment that I would do like as a kid, where like you put food coloring in water and then a wet paper towel and you have it like climb all the way into like the other cup, you know? And it says that I can leave it in here for like half an hour. So I want this really dark, so I'm going to try to leave it in for a little while. Okay, I left it for like 20 minutes and it doesn't seem to be getting much darker, so I think I'm going to take it out, try to pour out some of this dye and then add some more water in and get a lighter ombre all the way up. But it looks good so far. Alright, I'm back. Still looks really dark, but I'm hoping it's not. So I think I only need to dip the like middle section here and then kind of let it climb again. I think we might actually be getting a really nice ombre like this. I also angled my fabric down so that gravity takes a part, and then I angled it back up so that it would kind of stop where I wanted it. Okay, so I probably should be finishing like one aspect of this dress before I start on another one. But I think next I want to work on the ear cuffs because I'm just really excited about them. So I bought a bunch of fun things from Michaels. The main one of which being this wire that I'm going to use for making the main shape of it. And then at the very top of Grimes' ears, she has these little like angel wings. So I actually found some that are really similar. I have some of these like teardrop crystal pieces. I have some thin chain. And then I also have these little metal beads. And I think I'm just going to mess around with this until it looks something like hers. I also always low-key wanted to make one of these things, but I never had any reason to, so I'm really excited. Honestly, for the ear cuffs, it was just a lot of experimenting, and I found a few reference photos to kind of go off of for the basic shape of it, and then I just tried to add as much decoration and make it as close to Grimes as I could, but it was honestly really fun to make, just playing around with it and everything. Alrighty, I finished up both of the earpieces and they look so freaking cool. I feel like a Zelda character when I wear them. And now that my dyed fabric is dry, I think I'm going to go ahead and start cutting out all the pieces to put on the dress. Because I started on the leather pieces, but I think that I want to get these ones on first and then cut out those pieces to kind of fit in the rest of the spaces. So I made one dipped end much longer than the other one because that's kind of how hers was looking. So I think I'm just going to be cutting a bunch of long triangles from the white parts that get gradually larger down to the dark parts, and then kind of mess around with that shape and start pinning it on the bodice and see how the heck I'm going to do this. So I kind of pinned some of the pieces onto the dress form, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to do this. But before I cut the other section of the pieces, I'm going to work with the short ones and firstly put a rolled hem around all of the edges so they don't fray, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to hand stitch all of these on. Alright, well, the time has come to finally start putting everything onto the mesh fabric, and honestly, I am terrified. But I think the first method I'm going to try out is hot glue because that would be the easiest option and the fastest. So my basic plan is I have this little rubber mat which hot glue does not stick to. So I'm going to put it underneath the fabric so that it doesn't go through the mesh and ruin my mannequin. And I'm going to just kind of shape these as I glue it on. So I'm really hoping this works. But you know, I'm thinking I should maybe start in the back, so in case it looks horrible, it's not a big deal. And honestly, I'm trying to lay this down like imperfectly because hers does have a lot of texture to the layment. So that's why I'm thinking that the hot glue might really work for this. Okay, at least I'm getting better as time goes on. All of the long ombre pieces are now attached, and so I'm just going to be using the rest of my white scrap pieces to fill out the rest of the bodice. Finally, all of the fabric pieces are glued on and it's looking really cool so far. And now I think I'm going to continue cutting out all the leather pieces that I still have to glue on. So I cut out a few of my leather pieces, and I'm thinking doing this one at a time will be easiest so they don't get all mixed up. So I'm just going to take one of my pieces and I'm going to cut it into multiple rows. And then I think I'm going to take out a few of the pieces to make these a little bit smaller because we're adding space in between, so these are going to get bigger. And now I'm just going to paint all the edges with my silver paint. You know, scratch it. I don't think I'm going to do the silver because I think it's just going to take way too long and it doesn't add that much. So I think I'm just going to try to glue these strips onto the dress now. Well, I'm making progress on all of the leather, but it's literally going to take me years at this rate. So I feel like we should just finish up all of the sewing we have left to do on this project, which is literally just Grimes' mask. So for that, I bought this kind of metallic fabric. And I'm going to use just a regular white lining to go under the mask because I don't feel like this would be very comfortable. And then I also have some fusible interfacing to make it a little bit stiffer. So I just drafted up a mask pattern that fits me nicely, and I'm basically just going to sew a regular mask. And I'm just going to make mine a little bit wider because hers kind of wraps around her ears and I want that same look. I'm basically just going to cut 2 of these pieces out of all of my fabric, fuse my interfacing to my lining pieces, and then stitch these pieces together around this curved edge here. Now we have our 2 basic mask pieces. But Grimes's has some kind of interesting detailing that I think I'm going to try to recreate. So at the bottom edge here, I'm going to fold this seam flat, pin it in place, and top stitch it up until about this point here. And if you look really close at Grimes's mask, she kind of has this funky nose piece. So I think to kind of get the same feel, I'm going to top stitch down this kind of triangle shape around the nose. Interesting. Now I'm going to take our 2 masks and pin them pretty side to pretty side and stitch them together around their perimeter, except leaving a little hole at the bottom to turn it right side out. I added some zigzag stitches around the edges because this metallic fabric loves to fray, and now I'm going to turn it right side out. And I'm just going to stitch on some elastic to the ends and hand stitch up that little hole that we left. And the very last thing that I have to do is Grimes has these kind of like funky things coming out of the side of her mask. So I found these little craft sticks that have a pointy end and I cut them to be the length that I want. And I'm going to paint them silver and then glue them to either side of the nose. And finally, it is time for the big reveal. This dress is by far the longest a project has ever taken me on my channel. Gluing on all of those leather pieces like literally took years, it feels like, but I think it looks really, really cool. And honestly, I was a little unsure about it, but as soon as I put like it all on, it like really came together for me. My biggest regret is that I didn't find a sword to model with it, but I still think the final look is really, really cool. And I'm sorry this video took me so long to get out. I know I said I was gonna have it out like 4 weeks ago or something, but hopefully the wait was worth it because I really had a lot of fun with this project and it was definitely quite a challenge for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed the whole process, and just thank you guys for being patient. I love you guys all so much, and I hope to see you guys next week for a new video. Bye!